In this video, we're going to be going through some tips for new players. This is not a new player's guide. I'm not going to teach you how to do everything, like get in and out of your ship, or fly, or equip weapons, or do all these things. I'm just going to go through a few things that have been helpful for me to know, and address some of the things that I get asked the most in my comments and by my friends and on stream. And one of the biggest things, of course, is what do you actually do in Star Citizen? And that's through the contracts manager. Now I'm going to point out that at the end of December or at the beginning of January 2021, there will be a reputation system in place which changes your contract progression. But there still is, as of right now, a form of contract progression in the sense that when you do contracts for specific entities or people or companies, etc., you will then have more available contracts to you, and those more profitable contracts will show up in personal. It's also worth it to point out that when you get these contracts called appointments, these send you straight to an individual, and that individual will then offer you contracts upon meeting with them. Some of those contracts are really lucrative. A lot of them are lucrative and more interesting than some of the general contracts. So if you finally get an appointment, I recommend taking it because it's a lot of fun. It's also worth it to point out that you get different contracts depending on where you are in the verse. So each system around, well, this is all one system, but around each planet, you get different types of contracts. So if you're new to the game and you're not liking what you're looking at, just fly to a different planet and then start doing contracts there, and you'll see other things populate. For example, one of my favorite contracts only populates around ArcCore and Microtech, and that is a boarding action where you go kill pirates on an 890 jump, which is awesome. It's a fun way to see the ship, and it has both ship combat and FPS components, and it's a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to go through 3 examples of different general contracts. I'm going to show you an insurance investigation, an FPS mining mission, and an AI bounty hunting mission. And I'm going to show you these 3 because they are 3 of the safest forms of contracts for early players, in the sense that they are all low risk. They're low risk because you don't have to invest money in them, and they actually don't take that much time. And so if a server crashes, or if something goes wrong, or a ship despawns, they're the easiest ones to just dive back into without losing that much time or money put into them. If you've already done those missions, just skip ahead past those parts of the video for the pithier, faster, more straightforward tips. The main reason that I suggest doing insurance investigations, cave mining, or AI bounty hunting to earn money is that all these 3 kinds of missions have the lowest risk and some of the fastest time inputs. So, for example, not health risk, by the way. Don't bump into doorways. And if you do, bring Medpens. But if the server crashed right now, and I was unable to finish this mission, I would still have made the bit of money that I have already made through the mission. Which means that any time that you lose on the mission doesn't necessarily mean that you lose money doing the mission. Unlike, for example, hauling cargo. Hauling cargo requires you to invest money to get the cargo, and then you don't receive a payoff until you warp across the verse and then sell the cargo, which means that the time in which things can go wrong is pretty long. Hunting AI bounties is sort of the same way, because they're fast to warp to, and you can take them out pretty quickly. And if you don't really lose any investment money. So to try FPS mining, first you have to go to Contracts Manager, look for investigations, and accept an investigation that sends you to a cave. This will cause a cave to spawn on the surface of one of the moons around a planet, sometimes on the planets themselves. And you can go in with your little gray cat tool and you can mine ore while you're looking for the body. Now, for a while, this was actually one of the safest and most profitable activities per hour. Meaning that if you mined for a whole hour, you could make more money doing it than almost anything else. And if something did go wrong, you would still have your loot. Now, it's worth it to say that you can purchase equipment manager. You're going to need a Pyro RYT multi-tool from Grey Cat Industrial. And these are sold in loads of weapons and equipment stores throughout the verse. And everywhere that they're sold, you can also purchase the Orbit mining attachment, which you're going to need to put in it. Now, for long-term mining, you're probably also going to want to find a MacFlex rucksack core, which allows you to carry more ore all in one trip. These can also be purchased in a lot of places, and notably, you can get them in the new cargo areas of all the 3 major ports. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that if we go to undersuits, there are 2 kinds of armor: Novikov armor, which is known as cold armor, and Pembroke armor, which is known as hot armor. Both of these armors, well, they're undersuits that are also armor, all built in one. They both have more extreme temperature capabilities. Novikov allowing you to go down to negative 225, and Pembroke, what you're looking at, go up to positive 225 degrees Celsius, allowing you to survive longer in different environments. The caves usually, though, are pretty temperate, so you usually don't need to wear either one of those, and then this just regular old yellow rucksack will be fine. It is also a lot easier to find. So the rocks that you're looking for all look like this. They're small with what looks like golden moss on them and purple veins. Dolomite has green veins, but you don't want to mine Dolomite. When you right click with your mining tool, it'll tell you what it is and it will scan it. You're then going to left click and mouse wheel up. And on the left here, you can see the white bar going up, and you're going to get the white bar to above that green line, but below the red one next to it. Hadanite is worth the most. I think it's 275 credits per unit. Aphrite is the second most, and Dolomite is the least. Dolomite is also dangerous. It's the easiest rock to explode, and it will blow up in your face. As you hit the green area, you can see that bar is moving from right to left. Now you have to play this game where you mouse wheel up and down. Now, because of weird bugs, I recommend stowing this whole piece of equipment before trying to pick any of these up. And then you just stow this hadanite. You have to do one piece at a time, unfortunately. And this activity is what has turned a lot of us off to cave mining, because it's kind of weird and tedious to sit here and pick up each individual piece. But like I said, if you're diligent about it, now all of those pieces I have in my inventory, and as long as I don't die, I'll be able to sell them easy peasy. That sort of safety net is one of the reasons why cave mining has become a meta for players, although the fact that it gets kind of boring to hang out in a cave when you literally have a solar system to fly around in means that you probably won't spend as much time doing it, even though it can be profitable. So when you are in caves, finding a pink flare is the start of the trail of the fallen person, the person you're looking for. Now, like I said, they don't always spawn, so it's usually best, if you ultimately can't find them, not to stress about it. Okay, I'm stressing about this ledge, though. It's not letting me up. There we go. Low gravity, baby. But if you can find them, it's easy money. So we're just going to keep looking here for a second. If you get to a big room, go clockwise or counterclockwise. It's your choice. The fact that there are lights that are on is pretty cool. I haven't seen that in a cave yet. But I haven't been in a cave in a while because they are frequently not very interesting. And there our person is. So once you find the person, you just go click on them like you do in any other insurance investigation, and you get 4,000 credits. One hint I can give you to the caves is that if you see areas that look like this, which is they have a lot of jumps in them, and they have this kind of weird pebbly, grumpy looking texture, I find the bodies in sort of this game model more often than anywhere else, is what I'm trying to say. So if you see this, that's a good place to go. If you get lost in mines, well, there are flares you can buy to get yourself out, or you can just keep struggling or keep looking or whatever. Oh my goodness. Windows Defender, are you trying to ruin the take? Get out of here. But you can also just exit to menu. It means you're going to have to call your ship back on insurance when you get back, but exiting to menu and re-entering doesn't penalize you in terms of losing your goods. Easy peasy. So I've respawned, I reloaded back in because let's pretend I couldn't find my way out of the cave and I gave up. I exited the menu, I loaded back in. I'm in Port Olisar right now, but if you're not in Port Olisar, you're somewhere else, you need to go to admin services. Here it's a desk, usually it's an orange room, or at least the door and the main wall are orange. And you need to go to the trade terminal. You can go to sell, Hadnite. I only mined 6 Hadnites because I just mined the 1 rocks I showed you. Sell Hadnite. If you get a whole backpack full, I believe it's like 35,000 credits worth of Hadnite. Plus the 4,000 from the finding the body, you know, you're looking at quite a bit of money, and it doesn't actually take that long, although it is annoying to sit and pick up all of those rocks. And every once in a while, I find it morally defeating to sit in a cave when the stars are calling. So we're gonna look at a player versus AI PvE bounty. And I'm going to do it in the Aurora MR, which is one of the starting ships. In my opinion, it's the best $45 game package. The Mustang Delta just doesn't really have enough purpose. That turret in front of me is drunk. What's fun about the Aurora MR is that it allows you to do deliveries in it. It has a bed, so that way you can log out from space if you really want to. And also, you can soup it up pretty hard, and I'll show you more about that later. But right now, I'm going to go to Contracts Manager, go to Bounty Hunting.
Thank you.
Now, in this menu, who the bounty is from, who the bounty is from will tell you where it is. So I am around the planet Crusader, so Crusader security, boom. That's how I know that I won't have to fly that far to get to this bounty. It's worth it to say that your bounties progress in different areas. They're regional. So the more bounties I do around Crusader, the more high-paying bounties I get around Crusader. And the same is true for the other systems, most notably Hurston, where you get authorized execution warrants. And those can actually get up to about 12K, I believe, per contract. And before we accept this bounty, we are going to also go to Mercenary and accept Call to Arms. A Call to Arms is good to accept whenever you're doing any combat at all, PvE combat at all, because every time you take out someone with a crime stat, you will get bonus money. That means when you're doing bounties that have more than one target, only one of those targets is the quote-unquote bounty, but all of those targets can have the opportunity to offer you money. It's a great way to make loads of cash all at once, but also it's one of the safer forms of investment, because if the game loads out... Oh, speaking of not loading, what is wrong with this Astro? Oh my goodness, I was inside of that. So if the game freaks out and 30Ks or something like that happens, I can't stress this enough. This is one of the missions that won't break your heart if you're just like, oh, I have to re-accept it and warp back to it. You don't lose any money from an initial investment or anything like that. When you're fighting, I recommend flying slower than this bar here. Down here you can see your minimum and maximum range for your missiles, so you know when how close you have to be. That's really helpful. Make sure you double check your key binding for your missiles. I think natively it's middle mouse button. I have changed the binding so that way it's a side mouse button, because the middle mouse button is weird for me. Make it whatever you want, but just make sure you check it. I can't tell you the number of times I introduce someone to this game and they're in the middle of combat, and in the middle of combat, that's when they decide to ask me, how do you lock on missiles? Look at that, it's a Mustang Delta. We're about to get living proof that the Aurora is better. The AI don't really know how to fight that well. There's a lot of what you're looking at here, which is sort of like this face-to-face confrontation. Which is funny. Honestly, it's hilarious. But it... Oh, see? More lag. But it's one of the things that makes it easy to farm AI missions. And just like that. Hold on, I'm gonna go see something. That's 1500 UAC, but look at how fast that was. Like, it didn't take any time at all to do that. And that's what makes it so easy to farm. Now, because this weapon, because this ship has ballistic weapons and only 2 missiles standard, you're gonna have to make sure that you go re-up your ammo at a spaceport every once in a while. I want to show you something cool. I just looted a body. Whoa, looted a space body! Oh. My game's freaking out now. Well, I'm not sure what to do about that. That was not in my notes. Oh, I stowed the weapon and everything is fine. Anyway, you can loot the weapons off the pilot's body, which I think is cool. I just thought that was a fun tidbit to show you. It doesn't really help you that much or save you that much money. Weapons are so cheap. But as I was saying, because your weapons are ballistic and you only have 2 missiles, you're going to have to go in here, go to guns, and you can see your ammo. I have tons of ammo left. I only used about 1,000 bullets each Gatling, which means I could get in about, 5 more fights of the same kind before I really had to worry of the same size. So that's what makes those 3 different kinds of missions, FPS mining, insurance investigations, and AI bounty hunting, the safest, quote-unquote, safest way to make money. And that's one example of each, which I hope helps. If you have enough ships that you fill the whole screen on your ASOP terminal, your vehicle summoning terminal, and one would show up at the bottom, you might have to scroll up and then scroll back down to get the last one to show up. This next one is kind of a funny one. because it's, well, it's goofy. But if you need to drink water or eat, as you can see on the bottom left, I'm getting slowly thirsty. You're going to first have to take off your helmet. Now you can do that by holding F and hitting right click instead of left click, which opens your personal inner thought system. And you can go to helmet unequip, which will take off your helmet. Now also, to do it faster, I recommend just setting a key binding for it. As of this patch, I think it's natively keybound to nothing. I bind it to H, toggle equip helmet H. They might have changed its default keybind and I haven't noticed because I already have it bound, but just keep that in mind. And if you're drinking water and you don't want to just take a sip, you left click and hold instead of just tapping left click once. It took me a little while to figure out too, and it's pretty tilting if you don't know it. To get rid of the bottles, you want to practice the new throwing mechanics because they just updated those and they're good. Then you hit H. The personal inner thought system will also let you access a bunch of emotes, actions, player, emote. And there's 5 pages of emotes, and whatever you have used most recently will show up in the first page of the personal inner thought system. You can also stow water in your inventory, your personal inventory, and use it for later. To access it, you hit I, then you wait, and you can see everything that's stowed in your backpack. To get it back out, you right click and carry it. I stowed some food in here earlier. And you will have to wait a bit. It's not the fastest, but it has been working every single time. Boom. There it is. And now I can eat these protein chunks. A quick setting you're probably going to want to turn off in options. It's in game settings, and you need to go all the way to the bottom. I recommend turning off look ahead, automatically look at target, pilot / turret, blah, blah, blah. This setting means that once you start targeting something, your character's head automatically turns and looks in that direction. And it can be really frustrating to play with. I just recommend turning it off. So in the top right of our screen here, we can see this comm array signal. What that means is we are within an actively monitored area, and the monitoring is done by the comms array, which you can see is one of the things I'm looking at. By the way, if you hold F and then mouse wheel up, you can zoom in. Now, if you get too close to a comm array, it's government property, you will get a crime stat for trespassing. Also, on your skyline, they look like this, comm array ST2-55, and you can warp to them. However, you can also get inside of them. And if you get inside of them with a crypto key, which you can purchase a bunch of on Grimhex, orbiting yellow, you can shut down the comms array for a certain amount of time. Then, when you do that, this will go away. And as long as this is gone, crimes that you commit that are not actively monitored by a security or police force, you won't get a crime stat for. Oh, what are you doing? You gonna do some crime? So it does give you a crime stat, but it's not a very big crime stat. So I recommend, if you're gonna do a bunch of crime in one space, because some quests have you do a lot of the murder, if you shut down the comm array first, you can do the whole quest with only a teeny tiny crime stat instead of a big fat crime stat. And just a reminder from an earlier tip, if you're really gonna do crime, I really recommend doing it at the end of the day, of your play day. You can remove your crime stat, it is possible. But once you're in prison, if you have a long sentence, you can just sleep through it instead of playing through it. What are you doing? Don't come near me. Firefly, 2004. Is that when that song came out? By Owl City? Get out of here. So now 2 tips in 1. Whenever you warp to a new system, I highly recommend setting a spawn point at the nearest spaceport in case you die or you lag out or something happens, then you don't have to make the jump again. Now, you used to exclusively have to land all the way on the pad to do this. Now you can just, as long as you are assigned a pad, it will set as your spawn point. That's one of the tips. The other one is, if your comm menu isn't working for some reason, you can go into your comm link, hit F1, go to the menu, far left, comm link, friends, port OLSR, landing surfaces, boom. You can get in and out this way. So if you're in a hangar and your menus aren't working or something and you need to access them, that also works for that. As of 3.11, the targeting system has changed and it's gotten more complicated, but it also has a lot more features. I recommend checking out your key bindings and looking at all the different ways that you can cycle targets. And a great way to practice the new targeting is on a ship, on a station's turrets, because there's so many different targets. So you can see here, as you look at different targets, the carets change, and if you hit R, it changes which one is highlighted. And when you have one highlighted, you can hit Alt and then 1, 2, or 3, and you can pin it. Pinned targets don't have to be selected, and you don't have to be engaging in combat to pin them, and I use it a lot to actually pin friendly targets in combat. To unpin, when it's highlighted, you do the exact same key binding that you use to pin it. Alt 2 to unpin, Alt 1 to unpin. This next tip is on overpowering your weapons or changing their power levels. So at base power level, my Gatlings shoot like this. And if I go in the power menu, so if you go to menu, you have to pick power. You can scroll down and find your weapons. Yellow Jacket GT 210 Gatlings. I'm going to show you first, if I reduce the power by left clicking and moving the limiter, I can slow them way down. Now some things let you overclock them, and that means when you use them, they'll automatically go to 150 power, which is like saying 150% of their normal. This line here represents standard, but when I left click, it goes red and it says overclocked, and now it's shooting faster than it would normally. But you don't have to overclock it all the way to get more power out of it. If you turn that off and then put the limiter above this line somewhere, you can find a happy medium. Now with most weapons, there is a sweet spot where you can go above base power and not overclock them, and you can get more performance out of them without overheating them, or at least not overheating them quickly. So whatever ship you have, just play with the power and find that sweet spot, and you'll get more DPS out of your ship without overpowering it too quickly. If you find yourself walking really slowly and you can't figure out why you're moving through molasses, you have to mouse wheel up. Sometimes people are accidentally crouched, but usually you have to mouse wheel up because mouse wheeling controls a refined speed system. Kind of like Escape from Tarkov. No, exactly like Escape from Tarkov if you play that game. So one of the known bugs is that sometimes you can't summon your ship from a terminal. Now in 3.11 they have massively reduced the number of times that this happens. You don't really get the error and the disappearing ships nearly as much as you used to. But if you do, you need to go and summon your ship from a new place. Now the easiest place to fix this problem without having to get out a different ship and fly to a different ship is on port OLSR, where you can just EVA to a different strut and it counts as a different place. Now I understand that what I'm saying is totally circumstantial, whether or not you are getting that error on port OLSR or not, but I'm just letting you know. That computer guy is freaking out right now, which is one of the reasons why I am floating over here. But it is the easiest place to solve the problem, and one of the reasons why I choose to spend most of my time around Crusader.
This one seems a little obvious, but you always want to have Medpens on you. They're really useful, and I literally recommend going to into a weapon or armor store, going to utility, and just going by and buying a ton. About 6 months ago, I bought 100. You burn through them faster than you think because clipping into things, bumping into things, blah, 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 all those weird nonsense things, they can all come close to killing you. And yeah, you're going to want to have a med pen. When you're getting ready to plan your route, there are a few helpful things on the skyline that you might not notice right away. One is that in the top left, it'll show you how much fuel you have. And when you set a route, let's say we want to go somewhere complicated. Let's say we want to go to Port Tressler outside Microtech. It'll show both warps and then how much fuel each warp takes. So you can see here I have enough fuel to do it. But if I didn't, I might have to find a place to stop and refuel on the way. So let's say this gravity well. Now, some of the gravity wells don't have R&R stations that let you refuel, and which ones do and don't, you can find up in the top right. So like if I want to go to Arc L2, for whatever reason, I better make sure that I have enough fuel to get there and to warp away from there, because that is just a bunch of asteroids and space debris. Don't get stuck, folks. So there's a big problem right now where sometimes you can't warp. That's not happening to me right now, so I can't emulate it for you perfectly. But let's say you've set a route to Yella, and then Yella is the only point that show up, and then it doesn't let me warp there. You push and hold B when it's done spooling and charging up, calibrating, and nothing happens. You undo it with B, and you redo it again, and nothing continues to happen. The only workaround I have found for this is trying it again. So clear the route, exit, and then try doing it manually. If that doesn't work again, then set the route again and do it again. Usually that gets it to work for me. If it keeps not working, then I recommend getting out of the chair with Y and then getting back in the chair. If it says obstructed, so when you're spooling and it's red and it's flashing and says obstructed, and it's obstructed no matter what you do, I found that sometimes you can just jiggle the reticle in a way that it's not obstructed. Oh, see, now my QT system's jammed because some players probably having a fun time. I did notice someone was flying a Mantis nearby. That's actually hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. But if it says obstructed, then I recommend quantum jumping to wherever you possibly can, and then hopefully when you get to a new spot, then it won't be obstructed. If it keeps being obstructed ad nauseum, I recommend logging off and taking a nap, because your blood pressure doesn't need that level of stress. This next tip is mostly relevant to those of you who have or are using a larger ship. I'm fortunate to have a Mercury Star Runner, but that is pirates. So pirates come and try to take your ship for joyrides, or they try to hide and steal your cargo, especially if you are ROC mining, because you can take cargo out of the back of a gray cat. Hello. So one of the ways that you can check for pirates hiding on your ship is that in comms, you can click the comms channel and you can see who is in it on the right. So anyone who is aboard your ship or immediately adjacent to your ship will show up listed here. Now, if they are there, there are a few ways you can get around them. One of them, of course, is have a buddy. I know that seems like a really frustrating answer to a problem, a common problem, especially since a lot of you just want to vibe and play alone. But if you do play with a buddy, they can guard the ship while you're mining, so that way people can't climb aboard. You can join an org if you don't have any buddies that like this game or play this game. There's a bajillion orgs, and you can find them on the website. Also, be sure to carry a gun whenever you play. That way you can approach griefers with force, and so you're not immediately unmatched. It's good to point out that the ROC can kill people with the mining beam. Yeah. And it can even kill your ship. So if you want to really stick it to people who are hiding on your ship, blow up your own ship with the ROC. Maybe you can fly their ship away. Who knows? That's a pretty baller move, I'm not going to lie. And if you're FPS mining, all you have to do is log out. And by FPS, I mean, hand mining in a cave or something like that. All you have to do is log out and log back in. I know that doesn't seem like a really fun role-playing way around a problem. But until the game is more balanced, it feels totally fair to exploit it in that manner. If you think of any clever solutions around pirates, besides just killing them or having more friends or something like that, let me know in the comments, because that's something I'm sure we're all interested to work out. But I think at the end of the day, don't negotiate with them, because if you give griefers what they want, they're only going to grief you more. Sometimes in the verse, you can't open your Mobiglas. There's a couple problems for this. Sometimes you need to change whether you're sitting or standing. Sometimes you need to close the launcher and verify your game menus from the launcher. Sometimes you need to log in, log out, and log back in. But the most common problem is that your body has physically despawned. As you can see, I don't have a head. And the Mobiglas is attached to your body, so if your body's despawned, you can't do anything. This happens the most often when you just change all of your equipment. To fix this, you have to exit to menu. And we're going to go into character customization and change our character's appearance. Most importantly, the gender. Some people think the most important thing are the eyes or the hair or whatever. I recommend just changing all of it. It also means that you shouldn't get too attached to what you look like. I just changed gender, randomize a couple times, save, and relaunch. Then you should respawn and have a Mobiglas again. And, more importantly, a head. Every once in a while I have to do it more than once, but mostly it works the first time. The last tip I have is to use the plethora of Star Citizen resources that exist. If you forget any of them, I have them linked here on my YouTube, but I would like to point out that I did not make them, so if you can support the people who do, I would appreciate it. I try to when I can. The first one here is Galactic Logistics, galog.co, and it is the king of Star Citizen trading and commodities pricing and everything like that. Their Patreon's down here, but like if you click on a commodity, you can search and see where you can buy it, where you can sell it. You can even plot your routes with your ships and figure out how much money you're gonna make, what you're gonna spend on gas, that kind of thing. The second one is made by Mr. Deschain, whose YouTube is here. He produces useful stuff on Star Citizen as well, and it's I don't totally know what to say about it, because it's life-changing. If you're looking for something and you can't find it, now it's not fully updated all the way up to 3.11. You might be waiting for 3.12 to do the update, because not that much has changed in terms of buying and selling. But it's extensive, and it's super useful, and it saves you a lot of time and heartache. I mean, because even going places in the verse takes a lot of time. Yeah, and then we have the mining guide, the ultimate mining guide. This thing I have mostly found useful, not for first-person or ROC mining, but for Argo Mole and prospecting, which has more nuanced and more complicated resource collection, and there's a lot more resources to get, and this is really helpful. Also, consumables, things like that. And then lastly, of course, Urkel. Spread love if you can, because Urkel is going to save your life time and time and time again.
You can search any ship that you want. Let's see. Let's go to your RSI, Aurora MR that you have. You can figure out what weapons you can put in it, what type of weapon they are. You can see where to buy a selected piece of equipment and for how much. And then the ship stats are here on the right, and that'll help you build loadouts or see what you need to do for any ship in the verse. And it saves you like 1,000,000 hours, and it's incredible. Urkel, you're incredible. And the biggest thing I recommend upgrading is your quantum drive. Because the better the quantum drive, the less time you're going to spend warping, and the more fun that you're going to have. I have the links here on my YouTube if you forget where they are. So I hope all these things help, and happy hunting.